The arrival of fall has most of us shying away from the beach these days, apparently even the sea life. Showbert the seal, who drew crowds when he showed up swimming in Beverly Show Pond last month, has returned to the area. Now, back in September, the gray seal was brought to the Mystic Aquarium after turning up in the pond, and after evaluation, re-released off of Block Island. But it looks like he just couldn't stay away for too long. Researchers tracked the seal just yesterday to the entrance of the Danvers River, perhaps, possibly looking to see some old friends. To discuss the motive, perhaps, behind Showbert's return and other aquatic news, our New England Aquarium senior mammal trainer Terra and curator of Pinnipeds and penguins at the aquarium, Kristen Van Oss. Welcome to both of you. What do you? We don't want to get in the mind of Showbert. We can't speak for him, but what do you think is happening here?
So gray seals tend to kind of hang out all in the North Atlantic Ocean, so it's not really surprising he went back to the same area, especially if he found a great fish source there. It would be a little unusual if he headed back to the pond, but maybe not shocking if, again, there was a great fish source there. They're incredibly intelligent animals.
And, Kristen, we always kind of, put our own human feelings on the animals, right? And although we're learning more what feelings they actually have in their own right, I was amazed how people just started telling these stories about him, like, well, he went to the police station for help as if he could read. And we just expected him to go back out to the ocean. But, some of this behavior, if we weren't able to track it, has probably been happening for forever, right?
Yeah, definitely. So again, like you said, we don't know what they're thinking. He didn't necessarily go to the police for help. It's a kind of a fun story though, and it's been a great way to kind of be an ambassador for his counterparts in the wild, get some spotlight on him, and everyone can learn about gray seals.
Right, and we're also trying to make sure people know we're trying to keep people away. I was fascinated by some of the coverage of this too, the recent coverage, talking about presenting it as if there's a line between wildlife and sea life and human life, and as if Showbert has somehow crossed that line, as if we haven't, as if there is a line, and if we don't cross it on a regular basis. What lesson is there here for us to learn about where we live and where they live?
So again, I think it's just a great way for us to learn about gray seals. We do try to tell everyone to keep a distance from them. So we say about 150 feet. They're going to venture into our areas. So big news stories lately are how, they're taking over our beaches and things like that. And I think we can share our spaces together safely as long as people can respect them. They are wild animals. So if you keep your distance and just be curious about them.
Kristen, has the ability to track and gather data? I mean, I know over the summer we had some news about, I believe it was a dolphin, and because of a camera that was attached to him, finding new ways in which he got his dinner, which looked more violent to people than they expected, I think, dolphins or porpoises to behave. And we've got news about the killer whales that seem to be mauling great white sharks out in the ocean. And that's something that seems to be news to us. Is this opening a broader window for how wildlife and animals behave? What are we learning from all this?
Yeah, that's really interesting because having animals in zoos and aquariums is so helpful to learn more about everything from their dietary habits to their physiology and their personalities. We learn so much about them. And I think a lot of people think the great white shark is the top predator in the ocean, but actually it's the killer whale. The killer whale is so strong. They're the top predator, apex predator in the ocean, and they eat a variety of different things from marine mammals to different types of fish, including great white sharks. And there's different ecotypes of killer whales as well, which is different groupings of animals that feed off of different types of prey and also live in different parts of the environment. And we have seen that off the coast of South Africa, there are some killer whales that will actually go in and kill great white sharks, and selectively they'll eat the liver. That's accounts for about a third of the weight of the great white shark. So it's a big delicacy for them, and it's full of nutrients and fat. Then there's other killer whales that'll prey primarily on salmon. And then there's also whales that will eat seals and sea lions. So all kinds of marine mammals. So it's really interesting, even within them being the same type of animal, the different dietary habits based on where they're living in the environment.
Kristen, are you feeling that we might be at a point in society, especially here in the New England area, where we're learning? We get all this data. I keep focusing on this because I feel like it's been happening forever, and we just suddenly are seeing it, right? And we're processing the data, and these reports about how many sharks there are along our coast, where, you know, experts like you may say there are more, but we also have cameras now and phone cameras, and we're posting about it and we're tracking them, and we've got this bulk of information that leads us to conclusions that are not new, they're just new to us. But do you think we're at a point now where we're starting to understand that we all share the same space? Like, we share the water with the sharks, we share the ocean, we share the coyotes. I know that isn't your wheelhouse, but the coyotes live with us.
Right. I think you're right. We're learning so much more through the drone footage and research, and technology has taken us so far that we can see how close sharks are to surfers or swimmers, and it can be alarming at times. And, you know, sharks don't naturally go out trying to eat a human being. It's just when we look like something that might be a normal prey item for them, like a seal, like someone might look on a surfboard. But I think you bring up an excellent point that there has to be that healthy balance of sharing the environment. And, you know, this information also brings up the ideas of conservation and really taking care of the environment so these animals can thrive both in their natural environment and in zoos and aquariums. So I truly believe the knowledge we gain from the animals in our care really helps to carry that message forward. And that, coupled with the research that you're talking about, the drone footage, or being able to train animals to have a camera on their back so we can see what's going on in their aquatic environment, is key to keeping it a healthy environment for them and for us. But it's always important to remember, whether it's a gray seal or a killer whale or a shark, you know, they're wild animals and they can be very unpredictable. So there needs to be that healthy distance that Terra mentioned between humans and animals that are in the wild.
Yeah, you can't often talk down any kind of animal. I have a relationship with a squirrel at my house, which I'm sure is going to go south at any minute with me on the receiving end. Terra, when we look at mammals like Showbert, and again, I want to get back to what we project on what they're doing. What are some of the behaviors that you experience every day that we might think are the animals acting like humans, but are actually more like we humans are acting like the animals we are? What kind of shared behaviors do we have?
Yeah, that's a great question. So all of the animals that I work with, they definitely have different personalities. If I had to compare them to an animal that you guys are familiar with, they're very similar to dogs in a sense. They definitely have their own personalities, and we can read into that. So they have different toys that they might find really reinforcing between each other, things like that we can see, and that we might apply emotion to, but that, you know, it's just a part of them.
Do you give them names based on what you think their personalities are?
Not usually. So we tend to name them. It can be a variety of different reasons. It might be a name of an area that they're from originally, or maybe where they were stranded. So our northern fur seal, Luna, we named her because she was found on Laguna Beach. And so we shortened it to Luna. So different reasons come into naming factors, things like that.
Kristen, we're seeing also a lot of reports of sea life being tangled up in fishing gear, again, something that's been happening a long time. Are there any efforts that you're aware of for ways to help keep the fishing industry healthy and working and diminishing the opportunity for harm to the wildlife?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point that you bring up. And we all need to work together on that project to make sure we have sustainable fishing in addition to safe practices. You know, it goes hand in hand with different industries that will rescue animals that are entangled. And you even see people in the public now reaching out and helping if they see a whale tangled in a net, untangling them and getting involved in that, which can be dangerous. So really professionals need to help disentangle an animal if they're caught up in a net. And it goes down to just following the regulations that are set up to protect the environment and to protect the animals out there with the type of equipment that can be used without having that harmful effect on marine mammals, fish, anything in the ocean. And also kind of keeping those regulations in check and following through with that and keeping our oceans clean. It's really working together. And that's where the aquariums and zoos have that messaging where people are learning about what's going on with overfishing or the pollution in the ocean and how we really need to take a look at that as a team effort, as a globe.
I'm talking
global effort.
I'm talking a lot about how we're getting used to understanding we live with the animals and mammals and sea life, but we're also looking this summer. We saw a number of times where juvenile whales were having a heck of a time and didn't seem to care so much that they were around humans. We saw whales crashing onto boats and getting out of the way, it seemed, just at the last minute so that they didn't hurt anyone. Are they getting more accustomed to us as well, do you think?
Well, they do get accustomed to us, or they get desensitized to all the activity because there's a lot of tourism, there's a lot of boating going on, and that can be problematic as well because animals can get rammed by boats and be injured or killed in that way. So again, as Terra mentioned, and it's important to maintain our distance, even when you're out on a tour, whale watching, whether it's killer whales or dolphins, maintaining a certain distance is required, and it's important because if they become too accustomed to humans, it affects them in a negative way. They get too close to boats, or if people feed the animals, whether it be a marine mammal or any other animal that you're not supposed to feed, like a squirrel is a good example as well. They get too comfortable with people and they could be aggressive at times. So you have to be really careful. And we want them to be able to be out there foraging and hunting and keeping that ecosystem in balance as it was meant to be. So it's important to keep those guardrails up and yes, view the animals and respect them, but also maintain that distance.
Well, I think Showbert has figured out the influencer's route here to a money-making career and maybe fast on the way to become our state mascot. You got to give him props for that. So Terra Wilson, Kristen Van Oss from New England Aquarium, thank you so much for joining us.